hello everyone and welcome to the next SAT webinar. This webinar is called SAT Math Test Fundamentals. If you weren't here on the previous ones, my name is Karen. I'm the Associate Counselor here at Plexuss. We have with us Christine, who is our tutor from Elite Home Tutoring. So thank you for joining us, Christine.
Thank you.
Just to give you all some background information about this webinar and how is it going to work if you weren't here on the previous ones. So Christine will be lecturing and you are free to let Christine know of any questions you have, and you can do so by clicking on the chat option and letting me know of your question privately. You can also let Christine know of your question by sending it to the chat. Can someone put their mic on mute, please? Okay, sorry, there was some background noise. As I was saying, if you would like to ask your question to Christine, you can go ahead and click the chat option. You can click your question to be sent to me, which I am my counselor Karen on the participants, or you can go ahead and send your question to everyone so Christine can see your question as well. If you would like to ask your question to Christine directly, you can go ahead and use the raise hand option, and you can do so by clicking manage participants, and the raise hand option should be right there. If you missed our previous webinars, they are recorded and they are placed on our Plexuss YouTube page, which is called Plexuss Social Media, so you can go ahead and access them right there. All right, Christine, let's get started.
All right, great. It's good that you guys are all here. Lots going on in school and online school and online possibly SAT testing coming up next year. My encouragement to you guys is just to keep studying. Be as solid with this test as possible. If they postpone a test, don't let it postpone your studying, because the stronger the score is, the better off you're going to be. So that's my pitch for that. And we are going to start today with math fundamentals and formulas. A lot of formulas that you need to know. Not tons, but you need to know them. And as I said at the end of last session, make sure you know those formulas cold. Don't rely on the reference chart at the beginning of the math section. Make sure you know those formulas, because that's not one of the factors that you want to take into the test. You want to say, I got those formulas down. I know when to use it. I'm going to grab for it. So today we're going to look at the formulas and the fundamentals. So I will start by sharing my screen, and we will look at a few fundamental facts, formulas, and then try out a few questions depending on our time. Okay, any quick questions while I'm pulling up the screen? Let's see here. Trying to go back to sharing. Oh, where is my screen? Oh, there it is. Okay, very good. Awesome. Okay, we have our screen in front of us. Can you see me? Can you see the screen?
I can't see. Well, yeah, now I can see both.
Yeah, there was a little lag. And I've got one question there, just make sure that one's okay. Okay, so let me zoom on up. Okay, SAT Math Fundamentals and Formulas. So the first thing is just some basic information about terminology. Believe it or not, sometimes we forget that an integer is a whole number, negative, positive, including 0. So if they use that term on a question, just talking about whole numbers, around to the nearest integer, for example. Don't put a fraction in there, it will be wrong. Real numbers include integers plus fractions, decimals, and irrational numbers. And I've given you some example of irrational numbers, a number that cannot be expressed as a fraction. And there's also at least maybe 2 questions on the math test. And I mean between the no calculator and the calculator section, about 2 questions on imaginary numbers. So when we get to that portion of the test in a couple of days, additional topics, we'll talk about the basics that you need to know about imaginary numbers. And if you don't get all of your questions answered, look online for some material and that will help you. Another very important part of this test is following the order of operations, which is something you did a long time ago, but it's amazing how important it is. PEMDAS, so if you have, you want to follow parentheses and then exponents, multiplication and division, then addition and subtraction. So don't be fooled accidentally in the rush of the thing. These are just basics, but it's easy to miss them. And if you were to do your addition before your multiplication out of order incorrectly, that answer would be provided for you on the test answer. So you've got to make sure that that's right out there in front of you. I got to follow the order of operations that I learned in 4th grade or whatever it was. The next bit of fundamentals that you will see on every test in some variety is averaging. So let me just, so write down, make sure you got your paper in front of you. I should have said that a few minutes ago. Make sure that you know these terms for averaging, etc. So average is the same as the means, and it is the sum of the terms, however many terms there are, divided by the number of terms. So make sure that you write that down and that that is something on your terminology sheet that you have memorized. The median in the same category is the middle value in the list, which must be sorted. So it's sorted from smallest to greatest. I'm not going to put these in order from smallest to greatest for you, but if you put these 5 numbers, it's an odd number of terms, in order, your median number, your middle number would be 10. If you happen to have a median, need to find a median of an even number, for example, this one 4, you're going to find the 2 middle numbers and average them together. So we're taking 9 and 10, the 2 middle numbers, and averaging them together to give you 9.5 for your median. This is review from way back when, but it's important. Those are the questions you want to make sure to get, no problem. The mode is the value in the list that appears the most often. So there's a term you need to know if they ask you. Example, the mode of 5 numbers, 3, 10, 3, 27, 50, would be 3 because there are 2 3s as opposed to only 1 of each of the other numbers. Okay, and then the last one that you will be asked about is the range, and we will work a typical SAT question on the range down the road. The range is the difference between the lowest and the highest numbers. So when you have your numbers in order from lowest to highest, the difference between the highest and the lowest is the range. Any questions on this terminology? And otherwise, we're going to move to something different, to formulas. No, okay, good. Just, it may seem simple, it's not. They are questions that are important. Please make sure you do have that paper out for these formulas. These are the formulas that you are likely to see on, that you need to use and are likely to see on every single test. As you practice, if you see other formulas that you didn't know, when you go over and look at your work and see what you missed, make sure to write them down alongside these formulas. So again, as I said last time, and I'm kind of playing with this sheet, the SAT formula sheet, it's a little easier to categorize. Put them on flashcards, I recommend, and put them on your mirror in your bathroom so that you don't forget them. Many of you are going to be beyond this as far as the math goes. You might be taking calculus, you might be taking pre-calculus, and maybe even statistics. And these are things that you've done a couple years ago. It's really easy to forget them. So the first category of the formulas is heart of algebra. If you've done any practice on this test, you've seen that category, heart of algebra. Anything related to algebra. You need to know the ones that I've put an asterisk by are the ones that are the most important. You need to know what the standard form of an equation is. They're not going to test you on what is a standard form. They're going to use that term, and you need to know what to do with it. You say, oh, let me put that in standard form. I know what standard form looks like. It's ax plus by equals c. Point slope form, important. Write it down, not on every single test. Slope intercept form, absolutely on every test. Maybe 2 or 3 questions that you're going to need to utilize this slope intercept form for whatever they're asking you. Tell you to shift that equation around. Not sure what, but if you don't know the form, you're stuck. So y equals mx plus b. M is the slope, b is the y-intercept. We will go through a question or two tomorrow related to slope and to the slope of a line, the next equation, the next formula. So I will show you how that goes into play when you actually have a question in front of you. The slope of the line y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 when you are given 2 points. So they give you 2 points, they want you to find the slope, that's what you use. It doesn't matter which order you find the difference of those points, but be consistent. If you start with y2 on the first one, then start with x2 on the x1. And the most common error here is to accidentally flip this and do x's over y's because that's alphabetical. So that's the thing to take note there. Okay, another one that will come up in a variety of ways, midpoint. The midpoint of 2 pairs of numbers on a coordinate graph. So this is the only formula really that is addition, not subtraction. X plus x divided by 2, and then y plus y divided by 2. A midpoint of 2 points is going to put you to the very middle, and it's basically an average of those 2 points each. You're averaging the points. Distance formula is here square root of x squared minus x, x minus x parentheses squared plus y minus y parentheses squared, and then find the square root of all that. That is something that if you are very comfortable with your calculator, you can plug that into your calculator. They will not ask you to clear your programming on your calculator. Just don't get bogged down with it. If it's on the no calculator section, you need to know it. So I say know it. The next one is average velocity, average speed. So the speed is equal to the distance over the time. Most people learned it as distance equals the rate times the time. There you go. That's all algebra related, some solid formulas. Okay, let's scroll down here. Of course, interrupt if you have any questions. Problem solving and data analysis is the next category that you will actually see on your test results. If you get your test back, that's a category. You can see how many you missed. If you've done a PSAT or an SAT, you could see how you did on that category. So the first on the left, I crossed out a few because it's very uncommon to see them on the test, and that's something that you can get into. It's not even worth putting on there. Growth and decay. You have the general form, maybe 1 or 2 questions max on a test. P is your principal, R is your percentage rate of increase, and T is your time. We will be practicing these soon. On the statistics and probability side, we have the arithmetic mean, which we talked about on the other sheet. Percentage change, probably 2 or 3 questions on a test. Percentage change. You find the new number and you subtract your old number, divide it by the old number, and multiply it by 100. Okay, next one is probability. The probability is the number of favorable outcomes over the total of the outcomes. Passport to advanced math. Quadratic formula. Know it. You could also put it on your calculator. That's useful. We'll talk about this a little later in the discriminant. The vertex of a parabola, when you have your equation in quadratic form, ax squared plus bx plus c, then to find the vertex of a parabola, you would find negative b over 2a. On this, also in advanced math, the equation of a circle with the center hk and the radius r. So hk is your center. Notice that this equation is subtraction between here, and your radius is squared in the equation. They're not going to usually ask you to do more than that on the test. Maybe identify the center, identify the radius, or put it in the proper form by completing the square. Any questions on the Passport to Advanced Math? Okay. Additional topics. Circle geometry. Area is equal to pi r squared. Circumference is 2 pi r. Those are listed on your reference chart, but you don't want to use that. You want to know it by heart. Okay, we'll switch to the next sheet here. Did the page switch, Karen? Just making sure. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, areas of a parallelogram, trapezoid, triangle, the surface area of a cube. I'm only going to read through these because you need to make sure you've memorized them. And there's probably a total of about 4 plane geometry related questions total on the test between the calculator and no calculator. The cube, a volume of a cube, side cubed, rectangular prism, volume, 3-dimensional length, width, and height. Cylinder is the volume is the area of the base, which just happens to be a circle because it's like a can of soda, times the height. And then a sphere, something that's good to memorize. Does not come up often on the test. Some basics, you'll get probably 1 to 2 questions on angles and parallel lines. Let's look at the left first. The sum of interior angles, 180 times n minus 2, so forth. N is the number of sides. So if the number of sides is a rectangle, that's 4 minus 2 is 2. 180 times 2 is 360, the sum of the interior angles. So I say make sure to know these because it'll save you some time. It'll save you some time. Parallel lines on the test. You want to know which angles are equal when you have parallel lines. So you don't need to know the terminology that you may have learned in geometry class or algebra class. So you don't need to know what an alternate interior angles are. You don't need to know the term corresponding angles, but you do need to know that X and X here are going to be equal because the lines are parallel, so the angles are going to be equal. You also need to know that vertical angles are equal. So that's a little review for you to cinch some pretty straightforward questions. This is an important part of the test. We're almost done with the formulas. Special right triangles are the 2 on the right side. You probably learned them. Make sure you know them and can recognize them. They're listed on your reference chart at the beginning of the test. But often you'll get a question that maybe has a circle and then a triangle or an angle next to it, and you realize, oh, that's a 30-degree angle I made. Now I can figure out what the radius is because of the relationship of the sides of the angles of the triangle. So if you don't spot it, you're going to say, I don't know what this question is. I have no idea. So put it on your memorization sheet because you want to be able to spot these angles and then know the relationship between them when you are presented with that. A circle with a square with a circle around it, when you cut it in half, you're going to have a 45-degree angle. So we'll practice those on Geometry Day. And then make sure that you remember the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. C is the hypotenuse opposite the 90-degree angle. Common trios for the Pythagorean theorem, especially on the no calculator section, are 3, 4, 5. So A would be 3, B would be 4, and C could be 5. One of them's missing. You need to know it without having to do the math on paper because you don't have a calculator. Another is 5 and 12 and 13. And lastly, 7, 24, 25. Common trios, I recommend writing them down, knowing them so that you don't waste time when you get to the test. And then the last bit on trigonometry, the other questions are not particularly common. So the basics that you need to know are the basic 3 ratios. Sine is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine, adjacent over hypotenuse. Tangent is opposite over hypotenuse. If you remember SOHCAHTOA, that'll get you what you need. Okay, any questions about that? Okay. Next one. We are back to our practice 2 test. This is the no calculator section. So on the next page, I have copied that question and written it down in my own writing. Please write down this equation and we will solve. Okay, utilizing the tools that we've acquired. Use the process of elimination, plug in the answers, plug in numbers for variable if possible. Okay. So if k is greater than 0 and x is equal to 7, in the equation above, what is the value of k? Okay, so I'm have it on the next page. Oops, hold on, get back up there. There we go, just barely. Okay, there it is. Same question right here, I rewrote it for you. So if k, so the first thing we want to do is plug in from the question. We're going to replace the 7 with where the x is. Okay. So the first thing I ask myself is, what are my options for this question? I can solve by squaring both sides. I can plug in the answers. It's hard to know which one's going to be faster for you. That's where knowing your personal strengths and knowing your personal weaknesses is the best thing. If you're likely to make a little mistake plugging in, then don't do it. If you're likely to make a mistake squaring because you don't know your squaring facts by heart, then choose the easier, but it's good to know what your options are, what's the fastest way to get to it. So I've chosen to square both sides. So I added 7 to this side, and now I have the square root of 2k squared plus 7 is equal to 7. Square both sides. That removes the square root sign on the left side, and I've squared the 7 to 49. Now I'm going to isolate my k, so I'm going to subtract 17 from both sides. That gives me 2k squared equals 32. And that means that k squared is 16, k is 4. Last thing I'm going to do, I am not going to just write down 4 until I go back and not be tricked. What is the value of k? Yes, I've got it. So the correct answer is C. Giving you options. Okay. Any questions about that? Next one is question 7. So let's go to question 7 here. This is more complicated. We'll finish with this. Okay, there we go. Okay. Question 7 has exponents. If x to the a squared over x to the b squared is equal to x to the 16, x is greater than 1, and a plus b is 2, what is the value of a minus b? Okay, so you need to remember a little bit about your exponents. Please write that down while I'm switching to the other screen. You can't really plug in the answers, can you? Because they're not asking for x or for 1, they're asking for a minus b. So my job, our job, is to find a relationship between, some sort of connection between a minus b and what we have here. Okay, so here we go. Go back up. Okay. So you must know the division of exponents. So I'll try to keep that on the screen as long as possible. So that's the rule number 1. Division of exponents is subtraction. You may remember, this looks kind of crazy here, but I'm sure you remember x to the 5th over x to the 2nd. Subtraction is equal to x to the 5th. 5 minus 2 is equal to x to the 3rd. So therefore, with that knowledge, that teeny bit of exponent knowledge that I have, I am going to rewrite the equation at the top so that it says x to the a squared minus b squared is equal to x to the 16. So therefore, a squared minus b squared equals 16. Okay, a little brainstorming. What can I do with a squared minus b squared? I can factor it. So you do need to know how to remind yourself of your factoring. And I will give you a few more tips on that on the algebra section tomorrow. So a squared minus b squared can be factored to a minus b times a plus b equals 16. Okay, so we're saying, okay, now I have an a. Now I know how I can use my a plus b in this question. A plus b is also equal to 2. I haven't used that information yet. That's where I have to go. So I'm going to substitute a plus b is 2. So then I have 2, substituting for a plus b, times a minus b equals 16. Now you're going to be home free because you are going to get to solve for a minus b, which is what they were looking for in the question. Okay, so 2 times a minus b equals 16. Divided by 2 on both sides. A minus b is 8. Double check the question. What is the value of a minus b? Yes, that's what they wanted. And the correct answer is C, which was on the other page. There we go. 16. Okay. Any questions about that? That's as far as we can go for today. Oops. A minus b is actually, oh, it's 8. I put the wrong letter. It said 8. Let me just fix that real quick. So a minus b we said was 8, which happens to be a and not C, which I put. So it should be C. Okay. Any questions about that?
I do have a question, Christine, yes, but it's not necessarily about the math. Or let's wait until we have like some questions. Or does anybody have a question about the SAT in this section? Algebra tomorrow. All right. So,
come with your questions. If you have worked on it, then come with those questions.
Okay. Guess there's no questions. So this is a question from Hannah.
Yes.
So I know that the SAT and the ACT are very similar in terms of the sections they have, but will there be any ACT webinars?
You know, we have not discussed that, so there could well be. There could well be. They are similar, but there are some areas that they're different, and the material's different. So if you are interested in that, let Karen know as your associate counselor, and then we can hopefully go forward with that. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you. Any last minute questions? Okay.
Sounds
good. I think
good.
That's it. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So here are a few ending notes for everyone. The next webinar, as Christine mentioned, is the SAT math test, and it will be about the algebra section. That will be tomorrow, April 16th at 1:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We will very much appreciate it if you download our Plexuss app. If you download our app, you'll be able to receive instant notifications. That is, if you chat with my counselor a lot, you'll be able to receive instant notifications from my counselor. We will also very much appreciate it if you rate it and review our app. You can do so on the App Store or Google Play. We appreciate your feedback. Next, we have Chat with My Counselor. If you have any questions regarding this webinar, or if you would like to reach out about your specific journey to higher education, we are always happy to help in answering those questions as well. Next is Connect with Elite Home Tutoring on Plexuss. I put the link on the chat. If you scroll up to the introductory notes that we have Connect with Elite Home Tutoring, you can go and copy and paste that link into your browser so you can access their profile. Another way you can access their profile is by clicking at their logo at the banner at the top of our Plexuss newsfeed page. So go ahead and do that if you would like to ask Elite Home Tutoring any follow-up questions about these webinars. And lastly, it is not on the list, but let your friends know about the upcoming webinars that we have. The next upcoming webinars will be about the SAT math test. So feel free to let them know. We will very much appreciate it. And thank you very much for joining us today. We will see you all tomorrow for the SAT math test algebra section. Bye, everybody.